operator are with us. I guess some of you have been here yesterday. They've done a performance in the staircase. You have a project I'm also part of. We're an artist. What are we? A collective? Are we that?
A boy band?
We're a boy band. I like the boy band part. Okay. You're going to speak about experiential art and the blockchain, which is going to be great. Operator are, as you can see, an artist duo. You founded in 2016. Is that correct? You used to be based in LA. Now you're based in Berlin. Very active in Berlin. Like very recently, you've done an artist talk at Serpentine Galleries, which was quite interesting. Glad to hear a second one very soon. And you're going to tell us about your artistic practice probably from the start until unsigned.
Yes.
Beautiful. And
Thanks,
then we
Annika.
get dinner afterwards, I heard. Oh, no.
Pizza.
Thank you, Annika. Okay, hello everyone. So I'm Dejha, if you don't know me.
And I'm Ania.
And together we are Operator. So before we were Operator, we were individual humans. I have to emphasize this because Ania and I are also married. So having an art practice and being married is quite immersive, as is our native medium. So that's why we're emphasizing the separatism, because we're still trying to figure out if that still exists, right?
Yes, every day.
So I think it's important first to talk about pre-operator.
So my background, I grew up dancing, so I was trained in movement, later performance art, choreography, all things really to do with the body as a medium.
And for me, so my background is in HCI, human-computer interaction, and large-scale immersive environments. So early on in my career, I was creating artworks with 360 projection mapping, interactivity with physical computing. And then in 2016, Ania and I met, and we had our first collaboration, started dating, and then we were married like 9 months later, I think. This is a little bit of our work together, though. So what you saw there was a select montage of our work. Our practice brings together the human body, performance art, as if some of you saw last night, but both creative technology as well as immersive environments to create pretty much a world that you can step inside of, right? So this isn't work that you can hang easily on your wall, for instance. So with that in mind, we really circle in the what people call the art and technology kind of realm, which we always are really kind of confused by this way of framing it, because we don't say like art in clay or art in paint, but we have to say art in tech, and it really kind of, highlights something unnecessarily, I think, and it puts the focus and the emphasis on the wrong place. And I think when we really look at what happens is that the tech world is always, eye-rolling, the art world when, art's using tech. And then when, the art world is eye-rolling, the tech world, like, they're trying to do artful stuff again at Samsung, and then both of the parties kind of, end up saying, is that all there is?
Is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing.
You know what I'm talking about? Has anyone had that feeling before with an art and tech project? Art that happens to use tech? Okay, so our North Star is more of like the EAT, Experiments of Art and Technology, 1967. We can't go into all of this right now, but this is more where we're coming from, where it's the spirit of experimentation between art and technology, and only if it makes sense to use technology do we use it, right? I think this is important.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think what has been really nice about working together is we kind of are packaging the artist and engineer, and Dejha's both an artist and has a tech background, so we have all of that within our unit to play within, so it never feels like we're reaching too far outside of our in-house skills in order to make something, which usually makes for the art and the technology to be integrated in a way that hopefully you're just experiencing the art and not thinking about the tech side, which is always what we're aiming for.
So as we're very passionate about this, we've made our own rule set for art and technology. So this is also something other people can apply to their practice if they like. But the first one is no tech demos, right? This is very, very important. The second is not to rely on scale. As you will see, our work is very, very large. It's very, very immersive. But immersion shouldn't just rely on scale, on physical scale. It should rely on immersing both emotionally and psychologically. So just because we're creating big doesn't mean we can rely on that. Next.
And the next one is always asking, when the tech is no longer novel, will the work still hold up? And I think this piece is not amazing because it has the newest model of TV. And I think sometimes it's really easy with new and exciting technologies coming up to be like, this piece was made using this thing, and then that kind of makes the work exciting. And so if the art is relying on the novelty of the technology that's being used inside of it, then it might not be art.
I'll let you take this one because you're the choreographer.
Yeah, and Yvonne Rayner, no to spectacle. So I think in terms of experiential art and also immersive art, trying to really think of it not creating something that if you see it the first second, you basically have had the extent of the experience, but thinking about how duration and time and connections of nuanced moments over time and space can lead to a different, richer form of immersion and experience.
And I think all of this sums up really neatly, and you'll see this, I hope, in our work that we're about to show you, which is tech doesn't age well, but concepts do, right? So that is like our main sieve that we need to use when we're thinking about, is this work needing to use technology? And that applies to the blockchain as well. So here you have it. So we have this very fleshy approach to human-computer interaction and to our art practice. And we're going to illustrate these principles at play in our approach to experiential art at play through a series of selected works. So the first one we're going to talk about is 2019, the SCAD Museum of Art commissioned Ania and I to do a work that was on view in their museum for 3 months. It's called On View. So the premise of On View, it's really asking, are you going to see what's on view, or are you going to see yourself on view? Now, this was in a time where selfie museums, especially in the US, we were based in Los Angeles in like 2018, 2017, everyone was like, museum of ice cream, 29 rooms, everyone was making Kusama infinity rooms, and I'm like, you're Reebok or Google, like, why are you making infinity rooms? Her name is not even on this. This is very perplexing. The rich history of immersive and installation art is co-opted by experiential marketing, and it's like passed off as immersive art where there's no artist,
And this affected us directly because as immersive artists, we were getting asked constantly by brands and companies to make artworks, and then in the end, it was like, but it needs to be Instagrammable, because basically what they wanted was a backdrop for a photo. And so we were kind of like fed up with these requests of like, is art now just a backdrop for selfies, and the choreography of viewing art going from being looking at it to then turning your back to it and being photographed in front of it. So even the choreography of viewing art was changing, and we were experiencing it firsthand just through these requests. And we decided to, in our first time being in a museum, reflect on basically how experiential marketing and surveillance capitalism and selfie culture had all kind of come together to change even the experience of going to a museum, because people were treating 29 rooms basically the same as they would treat going to a museum to see an artwork.
With their art, you know, the back, you know, facing the art, right?
Yeah, as you do.
Yeah. So here is the layout of On View, and I'm showing you this because, you know, in the photos and the video, it'll feel like smaller spaces, but this was essentially an 80 by 20 foot, sorry, I'm using feet, footprint. So it's quite large with 16-foot ceilings, and it was a empty rectangle, and we fabricated subfloors and all of the walls that you see that's in there. So let us take you through. You see there's 3 main sections. So the first section is called Terms and Condition. This essentially is an immersive contract, an immersive TNC. The second phase is called the Stages Gallery, and the third is called the Golden Gallery. So we go 1, 2, 3. We start on that side and we work our way to the end. So let's start in the Terms and Condition.
So the first phase, the terms and condition, was, as Dejha said, an immersive contract where you basically would sign and give us permission to take your photo and to put you on view. And we had a contract in the room, as well as a performer who their choreography was kind of the embodiment of a contract. Like, how would a contract act if it was a person? And you signed the contract by standing on the pressure sensor in the floor. There was an LED light animation that circled, and then that's also drawing on kind of the design of the Instagram story loading. So we were using social media conventions in the spatial design as well. So once that was completed, you had signed the contract that you were inside of, and you were able to kind of advance to the next space. And just fun note, and when we're thinking about experience versus, you know, photographs, this room was slightly colder than the rest of the museum. So even using things like temperature, which are invisible and are not seen in a photograph, are a big part of our works.
And that also, you know, supports the argument that if a work is truly immersive and experiential, then it really can't be captured in a photo, right? And so I think this is something, you know, you bring up that I think is important when thinking about what is immersive and experiential art. So you've signed our terms and condition, right, between us as the artist and you as the audience participant. We've come into this contract, and you've walked into a space that is how it looks here, very dark, disorienting, a lot of use of two-way mirror. Remember, surveillance capitalism is like part of this kind of, you know, tension and tie to, you know, we were talking about selfie museums and addictive interfaces and Instagram, and that really quickly leads you into that rabbit hole of surveillance capitalism. But essentially here, there were 2 photo stages, but it was like a theoretical parallel to the selfie stage, but there was only one main difference, which was in order to have your photo, you had to be in a body position that was created by us.
So the way this worked was you would enter one of the stages, and we used environmental sensors and look at camera sensors to make sure that you were in the right position. And if you were, then that kind of activated the stage, and then there was an audio countdown that was letting you know when the photo was going to be taken, which I think we can hear in the next.
I think so. Not in this
slide.
one, but this does show you some more of the sensors. So we use capacitive touch sensors. So all the technology was hidden to the naked eye. This is something you couldn't see at all. So when you would touch wood, we had actually ways to feel the proximity of your hand, use facial detection and recognition to notice the position of your face when we had sensors in the floors and the walls. That way we could really kind of approximate where the audience participant was. And then once you've locked in the position, the hands, the feet, the face, then you hear the voice assistant kick in, which I'll play, and then I'll tell you something special about that.
Hold the position. 3, 2, 1.
And so while that sounds like the voice of a woman, it's actually the voice of Amon Tobin put through a filter that makes him sound like a woman. And this was kind of a way to shout out all the men designing female assistants, and the way that women's names, voices, and likenesses are used to kind of make people feel comfortable with surveillance technologies. Like, we don't think anyone would be comfortable with a machine named George in their living room listening to them all day, but if you give it a female voice and name, then that somehow, makes us feel more comfortable with it. So the way that gender is kind of used within technologies to make people take their barriers down. So that was the detail.
So at the end of the countdown, your photo was taken. Obviously, you didn't see a camera anywhere, but the photo was taken, and maybe you didn't even know that was what was happening. So you walk in, after this experience, there's 2 photo stages, one called I Didn't Sign Up for This, and the other one called Data Body. You enter into the Golden Gallery, which very much looks like a museum, but we actually fabricated it ourselves. I'll let you talk about this one.
So here you follow the same convention as in the terms and condition. You stand again in the circle in the center of the room. You're looking at this fine art case behind bulletproof glass. There's a security guard who was actually a trained performer who I studied the choreography of fine art security guards, and then I created a movement sequence out of that. So the performer here was performing those movements. That was a really fun process. And essentially, when you stand in front of the art case here, suddenly your image that was taken in one of the photo stages came up in front of you.
And you were on view, but only to yourself. And so your image was, in the most ultimate art context, on view in a museum, but there was no way you could get to it, no QR code, no social media hashtag. It was behind bulletproof glass and being, stewarded.
It was protected.
Yeah, it was protected. So this is how people ended up photographing themselves in the exhibition. We also lit the stages gallery, so it was impossible to take a photo, only in the sort of conditions for our camera, but it wouldn't work for anyone else's. So anyhow, I think, people were really surprised when they arrived to the Golden Gallery and said, well, how is my face, how is my photo there? And this is where it, really occurred to them, well, this is kind of creepy, that the system has been tracking me all of this time, and we use facial recognition to call up their image. So it's also only an image they can see of themselves. And I'll just show you a little bit of, the behind the scenes of the build. So like I said in the beginning, 80 by 60 foot footprint, subfloors. There's a lot of physical computing that's happening. So you can see we built, our own microprocessors, and we use Touch Designer to integrate and be the main brain for integrating over, dozens of microprocessor devices, facial recognition, kinetic winch control, DMX light control, audio, voice assistance, as well as the facial recognition guest profile generation. So this is how we knew who you are and where you were in the installation and what photo to serve up to you at that time. So you can see some of the behind the scenes here. So that is that project.
And one more note about that is I think that was the moment of On View, was when your picture came up and you thought it was cool, and then you were wondering, how did they know it was me? And that, I think this whole installation was about that one moment, because the feeling that was created at that time when they realized basically the environment had been learning about you the whole time, had been tracking your actions, had been making a user profile based on you, knew who you were, was watching you, was kind of a creepy thing. And people were very freaked out, wondering what's going to happen with their photo, but this was basically all a giant metaphor for what we're doing every single day. And so Dejha mentioned one time when we were talking about this, she's like, if we can do this with artists in a closed system, and you're scared of that, and we're just artists, like what could a government do with these technologies? What could a bad actor do with these technologies? Which is essentially exactly what we wanted to kind of highlight. Next we get into I'd rather be in a dark silence then. And we are eventually going to get to the blockchain. So after On View, we started thinking about kind of agency, and of course we're operating in these digital systems. It's like, do we really have to choose between operating in this kind of surveillance capitalist nightmare or being hermits on an island or in the forest and having no connection? And I think we started thinking about agency, and not actual agency, but also like ways to just represent human agency within these systems. And we created a signal blocking and isolating trench coat. So any device or RFID object that you put inside the pocket was completely offline. So it's kind of a piece at the intersection of conceptual art, fashion, and function.
And so this coat we created as a follow-up to On View, and then we were working with Serena Tabaki of Mokta and also Eleanor Breezy, and they were doing this interview, and they said, that we came about creating this piece kind of in conjunction with that interview, and we were in an artist residency in Berlin in fall 2020, and that's when the coat was being finalized in production, and because of COVID, we couldn't travel to the show, but it was shipped directly from Mexico City, which Barbara Sanchez-Kane, who designed the silhouette, was producing the coat. We shipped it straight to Italy because it went on view in Rome at Renaissance 2.0 by Eleanor Breezy. It was in a group show with like Ai Weiwei and Sofia Crespo and Hakatao. And it was on view there in a digital art context, in a blockchain art context, and everyone's like, what's with this trench coat? Like, why is this physical coat here? People are like, did someone leave their coat here? What is the deal? And so while it was very intriguing, we were like, okay, we have to show in an experiential way what this coat does. And this is how we arrived to showing the capabilities of the coat through an immersive installation that used an AR filter that was discoverable through a QR code, usable on it works on the art, it works on the audience participant. It was used in the 360 video projection mapping, as well as a sound score and poetry. And because of this, all of this coming together, it ended up winning the Lumen Prize, the Immersive Award, almost 1 year ago. And yeah, that kind of closed that chapter, but set us up for a new chapter, which enters into a blockchain and NFT space. And as you could see, a lot of our work, I don't know if anyone sells art in this room, but if you do, you might probably be like, well, this might be a really hard thing to sell. And so people always ask us, where is it? But do you have anything you can sell? And we're like, no. And so for 6 years, we just lived off of commissions and museum commissions.
Secret corporate work.
And secret corporate work that you'll never see, Might be companies that we're criticizing even. And then making surveillance capitalism exhibitions about it. And so that brings us to the privacy collection. So the privacy collection is rooted in I'd rather be in a dark silence than, right? And so we're really looking through and asking, how does privacy function and work within a blockchain lens, right? Because you have a surveillance capitalism lens in a Web 2 context, but now we're really looking into what is the tension between privacy and transparency and the challenges between those, and being known for being unknown and hiding behind PFPs and wallet addresses and such. So this is a durational NFT project, and I'll let you say more.
And where do I start? I would say
You want to start at the key?
The key, but also I just think it says a lot about where we were and where we are now, what we were thinking when you saw that installation. So it had the video, the photos, the filter, poetry, a score. And our first thought was, okay, so, we can use some of these and make these our first NFTs. And then we just started feeling like this would make no sense to start talking about Web 2, surveillance, capitalism, privacy issues, especially trying to always be site-specific and also conceptual with technology, talking about Web 2 privacy problems with a Web 3 technology. And so we kind of started with privacy and this cute idea of what we were going to do with bringing that into there. And then upon diving in and really doing more research, decided there's no way that we can do that. And so we ended up basically starting from scratch and making an entire collection entirely from the perspective of privacy in Web3, with a particular focus on the tension between privacy and transparency on the blockchain.
That's a good point to bring up, because
We were very naive.
The cash grab approach would have been like, okay, take everything from the Lumen Prize award-winning installation and piece it all out, and let's make all of those NFTs. That would have been the cash grab approach and not the non-site specific approach. But since we're not used to making money because we don't sell art anyway, we just make it. We were like, hey, this is no different. This
Might
feels
as well
natural.
take our time and do it right.
Yeah. So very much think of the privacy collection as a site-specific work, and the site is both crypto culture and the blockchain. So we started with the privacy key. Will you tell us about the privacy key?
So the privacy key, which you were just looking at for a really long time, as you can see, privacy, transparency. We are also playing a bit with the idea of utility in the NFT space, which is, when you buy something, what do you get if you buy it? It's like membership, it's like perks, it's like in the US, 7-Eleven, buy 10 coffees, get one free. And this idea that stuff that has happened and grown in PFP culture then gets put onto artists, that artists have to then keep rewarding people who buy their work with perks. So we took the shape of a utility key, but we also made it transparent. Again, transparency is a motif throughout the collection. And it was our first ever NFT, and we were like, we need to do this in our style. We want this thing to represent having experiences and being exposed throughout the collection for the duration of the collection to touch points, both physical and digital, with us. So we created these keys. They went on view at Vertical Crypto Art Wearable Tezo show during Freeze LA in February of this year. And we showed it next to the coat with the filter, so you had a bit of context. And essentially it was a promise. It was, here, we're doing the privacy collection. There will be things revealed and concealed along the way. And we had 9 people say, okay, this sounds cool, and they got them. And then the journey has begun from there.
It was also a way for us to delay selling art, because we're like, this isn't art, this is just the key to the art, to the experiential aspect. And I think also what's interesting is it's saying goodbye to the I'd rather be in a dark silence. Then you have the details of the coat in the design of the 3D of the 3D key as well. So it's kind of bridging those two, but also saying goodbye at the same time. And so the first thing that the key holders experienced were the privacy dinners. We always joke that a lot of the folks in the NFT space use Discord. We use dinners. We're much better at dinners than Discord. We tried Discord, and I think you could still go there, but we won't say anything. So you have to have dinner with us instead.
Which is so much more fun.
Yeah, so the first thing that the key holders experienced in 3 different cities were the privacy dinners. And the privacy dinners, we worked with a chef, and a different chef in every city, and essentially the whole evening was an interpretation and a translation of the privacy collection and the motifs of hiding and vulnerability and transparency, but in a 4-hour dinner with 30 people. So
and performers.
And for performers.
Yeah, so that was really fun. We essentially briefed a chef in each city on the artwork and asked them to translate those themes and that artwork into food. So and the chefs we worked with were really incredible, and they were covering food, so sometimes you had to unwrap it, and they would come out and say, this one is it's pulling on the theme of transparency, this one's pulling on the theme of darkness and uncovering, and they would explain it. So it was really a way for people to get thinking and feeling and tasting ideas around privacy in the collection. Also, we got to meet very interesting people, and I think also introduce people to what we were doing within this scene in a way that felt more natural to us. And there was also performers and a lot of kind of surrealist check-ins. Everyone got blank name tags, and a lot of touch points of privacy throughout every point.
And I think what we really learned in doing these dinners is that while it was just a natural way for us to connect with people and potential collectors, current collectors, that way and that mode of human interaction is really missing from the NFT and blockchain space. And we know this because all of these events took place during, NFT Lisbon or another NFT event happening, in a city where all these people are jam-packed, and they would come to this dinner. I remember Kevin came our friend Kevin Abosh, he came to a dinner and he was like, I was just gonna go to sleep tonight because I am exhausted with all of this. He was like, and I didn't even know I had the energy for a 4-hour dinner. But this isn't really a dinner. I wouldn't even call it that, you know? And I think, you know, the space is craving some physicality, and it's like, how do we bring these two together? So for us, this is precisely the challenge and the thing that we're exploring. So the first lot of the privacy collection is called Attempts. Why do we call it Attempts?
So attempts are 11 works, and they're choreographic attempts to achieve online privacy. And another thing that Dejha and I had noticed that was kind of missing, or we felt was underrepresented, was the human body. And also I feel like a lot of people that are really in the Web3 NFT rabbit hole are neglecting their bodies. Like, we forget we need sleep and oxygen and water and walks and these sorts of things. So I think in addition to just wanting to bring more performance and choreography and people working with the body as a medium into the space, I think the body is a neglected topic, both of people engaged and on the creators end. And you want to talk about the avatar?
Sure. I mean, so what you see, we shot live action footage. Ania went through a series of choreography tying to the idea of hiding within transparent systems. And we used AI motion capture to control an avatar, which we created out of glass. And so this was overlaid onto the live performance. You can see the avatar coming in and out of sync. You can see Ania trying to zip and unzip, pulling on and off the digital self. And so the attempt, you know, to be represented digitally, the attempt to free yourself physically, the attempt for privacy, the attempt, you know, for what?
Fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank. So this also had a sonic component as well. There was a custom score also by Amon Tobin for each one. So there's 11 attempts. And we'll play one of them for you.
Another thing that I mentioned, we wanted to bring more of the presence and reminders of the human body. Another thing we felt was missing, because upon kind of embarking and starting to work more with NFTs and the blockchain, was not just, you know, what can that scene do for us, but also like, what can we bring, what can we bring and offer the community and the conversation. Another thing that came up was slowness is really needed. So as you can also see in this piece, and we're very inspired in a lot of our works by slow cinema. And so it's both the body, it's also very kind of slow and meditative.
It also is art that you can sell that is, I guess, technically flat and can go on your wall. So we are also thinking, well, someone's going to be living with this, so we also wanted to make it slow. So now the second lot of the privacy collection, which is called Lot 01, which is really annoying because we are counting how computers did, so we started with 00, so lot 1 is actually the second lot, but anyway, they're called privacy portraits. Privacy portraits were 67, the collectors, 67 collectors had the opportunity in a proof of people VCA show to come and get their portrait anonymized. And so what happened is they arrived, they paid via their Temple wallet, and then they started their experience. And the experience starts with a sort of phrase that they get, like almost like a seed phrase. And then that phrase is called They are taken upstairs, and Ania takes a photo of them, instant film. And this photo is taken in a sort of context where they're in a particular emotional state. Because what did you ask them?
So once someone came and was kind of led and escorted up to the photo booth where I was, I asked them to think about something that they prefer to keep to themselves. And then at that moment when they were thinking about that is when I took the Polaroid.
And so it's interesting because before we anonymize them, they have this like really kind of emotional, heavy tone, and it was interesting hearing your stories of how people reacted in that moment.
People actually had really different responses, which was interesting for me because I didn't react to anything, but some people, when I said to think about something that they prefer to keep to themselves, suddenly looked really happy, like things that they're keeping to themselves is something that is private and makes them happy or content or pleased, like it's a positive thought. And other people, when I said something you prefer to keep to themselves, looked horrified. Other people looked confused, like, do I keep anything for myself? So that was kind of an unintended moment, but also something like that experience in that moment was built into the photo that then later became an NFT. And I think those personal moments like can never be detached from the photo, even if it is sold.
So after their photo was taken, they were taken to a second booth. At this booth, they were asked to roll dice. They would roll the dice. Depending on the number they rolled, they would roll the dice that many more times. That began to be written down on a piece of paper, put into a security box that was locked with a photo while it was developing. This is Polaroids. It actually takes 10 minutes. So we put timers in there, and they were brought down to the anonymization station where you see I'm down there with all of my tools. And when the alarm would go off, and there was a big stack of them. It was very daunting. I would go and open it, and I would take out the photo, and I would pull out what then provided an analog algorithm, right? So if you think of PFPs and how generative PFPs are created, we were thinking, okay, let's kind of, scale this back to, the beginning of computer art, because generative art has roots within, analog algorithms. And so before the computer was doing it all fast and stuff, people were doing that by hand. So we were like, let's do a throwback and, embrace that as this is a major topic within this space. So anyway, I used the algorithm to direct which materials, in which order, in which duration I would use to anonymize the photo. They were then scanned, and then they were basically projection mapped into the space and minted on the spot.
And just to be clear, it was like if someone rolled a 2 and then a 4 and then a 6, then a 2 meant you used glass. 4 meant you used a chemical. 7 meant you used this. So this is the way that the portraits were anonymized. So they were also, it was also highlighting both the human hand and generative art on the creator side as well as on the collector side.
So that brings us to the end of the privacy collection.
As of now.
And we have 11 minutes left in the presentation. So if you want to follow along on the privacy collection, you can join our Telegram, which I think is Dial Operator.
I forget.
Yeah, it's Dial Operator is the Telegram, because we release a lot every month to 2 months, and we can keep you posted there. So let's talk about this project.
Then, in June, Super Rare was having a show specifically celebrating Pride Month in New York. And while we take the position that you don't need to be on a platform to mint, and we should have a reason to be on a platform, this seemed like a good reason to be on a platform because it was a show specifically highlighting queer NFT artists. And so we said yes, but we are also thinking nothing from the privacy collection really has anything to do with queerness. We know this is going to be a historic moment. It's going to be in the physical gallery. What are we going to do? Then we started thinking about how to essentially, in our style, in our way, and in an experiential way, have a piece that's kind of about or around queerness that didn't feel like so much of a stretch. And that brings us to Let Me Check with the Wife.
So Let Me Check with a Wife is, I guess, practically speaking, is a scan of our marriage certificate.
And the physical one.
And the physical one, and you can see that there is a QR code stamped there. So what does that QR code lead you to? So if you go to the Super Rare page and you look at the description, it says, "Let me check with a wife, marital obligations included." Anyone married here? Okay, so marital obligations is a dynamic NFT that automatically pops up in your wallet if you're the collector of "Let me check with the wife." So not only do you have the digital and physical copy, but you see that there is this, QR code, and the contract address, it leads you to another contract address. Ania and I really, really push back on using platforms unless absolutely necessary, and we create our own smart contracts. So this was kind of our defiant way of like, well, even if we're on a platform, we're still making our own contract and we're putting it in the metadata of our Super Rare piece and we're tying it over there. But what happens with marital obligations? So say I'm the collector of "Let me check with the wife." I see, on OpenSea, it's like, what is this other NFT that pops up? What is this thing called? Oh, marital obligations. This is a way that we're able to provide reverse utility to us as the artist from the collector. So there's all this business about utility, right? And that NFTs and the blockchain, we should provide utility to the collector. And so we thought we should just, think of the concept of reverse utility. So there's an article on NFT Now about this.
And basically what happens is every year on our anniversary, we update the NFT and we request something from the collector. So every year on our anniversary, they have to give us something. That's our reverse utility concept and how we're making our marriage experiential. And also, aside from the reverse utility side, the framing of this artwork is kind of around Dejha and I. Obviously our marriage is real. We're an actual couple and we're not selling our marriage, but it's also about the way that we are inhabiting a traditional institution in a new and a queer way. And also neither of us was ever interested in marrying men. It suddenly became interesting when we could do it in a way that kind of was disrupting the very institution that we are inside of. So I think daily there is an active subversive performance in just being wives and saying "my wife" and making people confused by those kind of statements.
Great. Okay. Unsigned. Was anyone here last night? Yeah, a few of you. Okay, cool. So last night we had a performance called Acts of Devaluation, and this was a companion performance piece to Unsigned, which is a collaboration between us and Annika Meyer. And what spurred Unsigned was this: the addition of a woman's signature can devalue artwork to the extent that the female artists are more likely to leave their work unsigned.
So this was actually in Helen Gorel's research, and we're now in contact, which is very exciting. She's lovely. Essentially if there is an artwork and a man signs it, the value goes up compared to the one that's not signed. And it's the opposite for women. So if you have a woman's artwork that is not signed, it's more valuable than the one that is signed. So this was a little bit of a gut punch when we read this early August. We decided to essentially create a project that was also using NFTs to raise the literal and symbolic value of women and non-binary artist signatures.
So you can see, if you haven't been there yet, downstairs, the Unsigned exhibition in its current status is on view. So we have 100 participating artists, women and non-binary artists, who we have their signatures. Downstairs, I think there's 48. And so every week we release another 12 until we reach 100. People do say, well, I can't seem to find excellent digital female, woman, non-binary artists. If I did, I would include them. But we're having trouble fitting them in 100. So I mean,
it's actually so difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Every week we're like almost in a divorce over it.
So, This will go on for another few weeks, and if you saw the performance last night, that concept behind this, which is how it's called acts of devaluation, how much devaluation can we inflict on one art object over 90 minutes? So that's why we signed our name.
And we were thinking about this, we're like, do we have to pay someone to take this? Like, how much negative value are we putting on this scroll? So that was kind of the intention in the meaning of last night's performance. And another thing that's been, I don't know that we would have done Unsigned if it weren't for the blockchain and NFTs. And there is a way that we're almost wanting to leverage the kind of market mechanism in the way that people will want to outbid each other, and we know that these are going to get expensive on secondary, and so by just using the culture that's about, you know, wanting something desirable and cool, and then people wanting to sell it, and then certain artists having more demand, that by just doing what people do within the crypto art space, they're actually going to be up-leveling the value of amazing women and non-binary artist signatures. So it's kind of like using what the space is already doing for a cause that we think is extremely important and is not limited to Web3, but it's contemporary art. It's everywhere. And every week they've sold out within like less than an hour. So that's pretty good. And we keep being like in the second and third top selling on object. So we're proving that these signatures do have value, which is exciting. Das Ende.
We're happy. Do we have time for questions? Okay.
We have 3 minutes and 46 seconds.
Did you? Pizza?
And then there's pizza.
Pizza time. Oh, food. Yeah.
Anyone have any questions? You can also talk after. No.
Thank you for presentation. Maybe I miss it, but what's the deal with the artists who give you the sign? Are they part of the smart contract, or do they get any value out of the project?
Yes, the artists get 90% of the sales on, on primary, and they get 10% on secondary, and we get 10% on secondary.
Thank you.
Also, you can go to unsigned.art and you can read about the project, and it also shares all the information about how the funding goes and where the funds go and such like that. So, but we're also happy to answer any questions. Hot potato.
So, and what's your feeling about the space? Because the last thing, have you said that through this last project, Unsigned, you are trying to use, you know, the spirit, let's say, the spirit of the NFT space. So, what's like your personal attitude about it? Because as I see, you know, your approach to it is quite like I don't know how to maybe state it. It's you are trying to use it what is missing, maybe in the way like the dinners, like personal meetings, you know, to get it to more from the digital to get to the analog. So just what's your feeling about the space?
We're really loving it. I think it's exciting. It also, as Dejha mentioned, working together for so many years and not having anything to sell has been a challenge. And so we're now on a mission to become our own patron. And I think that basically for digital artists to be able to create works that can be owned and to also be making money off of royalties and secondary sales is really a game changer for artists, basically financial sustainability and also independence. And seeing both in our case and many artists that we know before the NFT space not having any ability to really leverage your skills except to use them for companies, it's a really big deal to be able to actually create your own digital works, to support yourself, and to also keep yourself, I don't know, not overworked, not in bad, toxic, you know, arrangements where you're being exploited, because it's like, you should love what you do, and so why would you need to get paid? Like, there's so much of that artists are dealing with constantly. So I think it's been really important financially to not also be like, it's not about money, because it is about money, because if you have money, you can, you know, make choices.
I was going to add.
And the culture, everyone, last thing, we're loving it. There are really phenomenal people that have a great, great ethics. Like there's a lot of, people that are annoying, but there's also a lot of really amazing creative people in this space. I think some of the best that are working in culture right now.
I was just going to add a quick note from more of the creative side. I think as an experiential artist working with durational performance that exceeds not just 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 3 days, but 12 months and beyond. For instance, the privacy collection the blockchain allows an experiential interface. Basically, it affords an experiential interface for us to continue to connect in even a technical level, you know, moving forward. And if that audience participant, which is a collector, I guess, too, if they sell, you know, if they replace themselves with a different collector, then that story can still continue. And from a technical perspective, it's very streamlined and useful technically. So I think that's a big plus for us.
Yeah, it has unlocked duration for us in our audience participant from, going from a 20-minute experience to we might have collectors that are unfolding for 30 years. The experience is growing and changing, and duration is a very powerful tool for immersion. So creative potential is also, there's a lot.
Thank you.
Hi there. Before all this NFT, art galleries was the intermediate between the artist and the buyer. And besides collectors who are buying for their hearts and minds, or for the manifesto behind the art, also there were like collectors, and still there are as an investment. So right now with the NFTs, that intermediate almost disappeared, the art galleries, and this has also kind of liberated the artists by directly having this direct link between the collectors and the artists. However, as it is sold through highly fluctuating currency, through cryptocurrencies, so how does it feel for the artist now? Or does it feel at all like responsibility or something like that after the sale, like all these fluctuations with the currency and the value or anything like that?
How does it feel?
Maybe it doesn't feel at all, but...
Well, I mean...
Because art galleries were facing that questions for the collectors that, what that artwork or that artist has got value this far at the past 5 years and etc. or not, etc. But right now, I think you have to face it.
Like the pressure's on us.
Yeah.
Does it? Yeah, maybe like a pressure or something.
I think, is what you mean, like the pressure to keep everything going is solely on the artist instead of having like some sort of representation? I think we're a weird case because we've also never really made work that allowed us to be represented. It felt like we were always like doing our own technical producing, doing our own marketing. Like we were just doing everything ourselves always. So this actually doesn't feel any different or add any more kind of pressure than we've always had, except it means that we can actually get paid for works that we're able to sell, which we never could do before.
Was that the question? Of the currency? Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, we just started selling our work in February, so, that's better than it was, than just commissions, which commissions are amazing, but, they don't go as far, I guess. But I think that did hit us hard actually when we sold attempts, because we sold most of the attempts on the day they were released, and I think ETH was at 3K, and then like within days it was like half, and then
it was 900,
and we were like, oh my god, we didn't take it out. Like we didn't stake it. We didn't, and we're like, but we still have all those fiat bills we need to pay for the studio rental and like our team, you know, and so that was not good. And it's still not good, you know, so it was definitely something that we had to learn the hard way, you know, on that first round. So that's not nice. It also is like the pricing then becomes very interesting. We're like, do we leave the price as the price? And, you know, we just left it, but like, they were mostly sold anyway, but it was interesting. But these market mechanisms and these questions we have advisors for, so we try to speak through these in a strategic way. But yeah. There's pizza here and we can continue talking afterwards. You've all been very, very patient. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to Alfred. Thank you to
Thanks,
Annika.
Alfred.
Thank you to...
Thanks, Art NFT Linz.
Yes.